What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel. I'm Keith, and I make board games for a living, and that's why I like to pay close attention to what's going on with Magic the Gathering. I've been playing a lot of Commander, I've been playing a lot of Brawl recently, and that's why I've been making kind of some commentary videos on those formats. And Temur is one of my favorite color combinations to play, and all of the Temur commanders suck. There's just so many Temur commanders that pigeonhole you in a specific strategy. I played Omnath for a long time just to play the good cards that I like in those colors, and Omnath was just such a secondary thing that was just like, yeah, if I'm playing lands, that's great for me. Flubs is maybe arguably the only good one, but because people are expecting such a storm outcome from this character, it kind of dies. It has no board impact unless if you are doing a whole bunch of other stuff on the same turn. Hard to play it on turn 2, and then your opponents kind of expect you to untap and win or whatever afterwards. And so rather than sitting here and looking at every Temur commander and complaining and saying how horrible they are, I've designed 3 new ones. I want to talk about some of the design space that I think that Temur is lacking, and what I would like to put into that space. So let's talk about our first contestant. This is Eshki. Eshki is also a commander that I've tried to play, and unfortunately only on Brawl, but it's just too slow for Brawl and has the same problem where you play it and has no game impact. And so I've designed this version of Eshki to kind of do what I want. It's just what I want it to do. This is Eshki Dragon's Herald for green, blue, red, 2/2 legendary creature human warrior. When Eshki enters, you may behold a dragon. If you do, search your library for 2 basic land cards, put 1 into your hand and 1 onto the battlefield tapped. Whenever a dragon enters under your control, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Eshki. This is kind of perfect for what I want when I'm playing a big dragon deck. The main problem when your dragon commander is something that costs 5 or 6 or 7, you just really can potentially struggle to cast this card, and when you do, you're kind of expecting it to be a game ender. Instead, I would rather a consistency card that is going to help me get there every game. One of my favorite commanders is Vivisa, because you play a ramp spell on turn 2, and then turn 3 you play Vivisa, and that gets you from 4 land to 6, and then you start playing out your bombs, and that's pretty much exactly what I want from Eshki here. The dream is turn 1 you play Mana Dork, turn 2 you play Eshki, you behold a dragon, and then you get to cultivate or Kodama's Reach, which is basically what that first effect is, and then you're kind of set up to be able to start playing bigger things after that, which is really what I want. And then you hit a spot where you start actually playing dragons, and then Eshki becomes a relevant combat threat, which is really interesting to me. The other versions of Eshki basically just requires you to be doing other stuff after you cast her. This one at least enters and helps you get in the game. I also wanted to add, the Behold mechanic is underused. Quick quiz, how many cards with Behold are there? Well, in green-red, there is 4. Sorry, green-red-blue, there are 4. Then there is 1 white one and 1 black one. And only one of them is a creature, which you could probably guess is Sarkhan. So I believe Behold, and Behold the Dragon specifically, is like really underused. It kind of fits this perfectly because it says, hey, you are playing a dragon deck, but you are playing a low-cost human creature that's going to help you play dragons. It's like really on the tin there. And I think there should be more commanders whose job it is to help you consistently ramp, because that's the format. If you don't stabilize in your first few turns, you don't hit your consistent land drops, if you don't draw Soul Ring or something like that, then you're just waiting to play the game while everyone else turbos in front. Having that option in the command zone is such a big difference, and I think it's worth having a commander that does that for pretty much every set of colors, which does something to help you stabilize in those first few turns. But also, I like the option of having a non-dragon dragon deck commander, which still has dragon synergy, and Sarkhan is mono red, and there's other dragon colors that I want to be playing, so this kind of fills that niche for me. A lot of this comes to, there is a 2-color or a 1-color card that I wish was in 3 colors, and we're going to see a little bit more of that in a second. But first, I want to throw some stones. I want to throw some stones at the Cascade commanders in Temur. We have Averna the Chaos Bloom and Maelstrom Wanderer, both of which I think suck big time. Averna the Chaos Bloom doesn't help you Cascade, and when you do Cascade, you get lands from the extra cards, and that's only sometimes. So it's super inconsistent. It has no board impact when you play it, and it doesn't actually create value. It just adds value to the thing that you're doing already, and then getting the extra land isn't really helping you do more on that turn. It's just, okay, all of my Cascade spells are also a Farseek or whatever, which is really jank. And also 2 toughness means that this thing just dies to like literally every piece of removal except Gutshot, and that kind of sucks, because if you ever have to recast Averna, you're like, what's the fucking point? Yay, I'll get a land next time I Cascade. This is like, I play it on turn 2, and then I Cascaded something on turn 3, I get a land, and then I'm trying to accelerate away from the beginning of the game. If it hits early removal, you're like, well, we already have left the beginning of the game. Goodbye, Averna forever. So, this is a 99, this is not a commander. And Maelstrom Wanderer has the opposite problem. Maelstrom Wanderer just has Cascade, and so you go, cool, I'll play it in a Cascade deck, because I'll Cascade, and then I'll cast a spell afterwards that has Cascade, and you're like, you didn't need to do all that. You just play something that costs less than 8, that's good. That's it, that's all that matters. And so that's kind of my frustration with these 2 commanders. It's not a Cascade strategy, and I just wish it was Emoti. Emoti is whenever you cast something with mana value 6, it gains Cascade, but has red. So why don't we just do that? Why don't we just make an Emoti that has red? This is Emoti Waterfall Sage for a colorless green, blue, red legendary creature, Snake Shaman, 4/2. So same stat line as Avernus. Now, whenever you expend 4, create 2 treasure tokens. If mana was spent from a treasure to cast a spell during your turn, that spell has Cascade. This is big time compared to Avernus. So this kind of builds upon the Emoti's original effect, where when you are casting something of a certain mana cost, it's going to gain Cascade. This is kind of similar, and we're hitting 2 different underused mechanics. That was part of the goal of this as well. I wanted to see some design spaces that hadn't been overexplored yet. So Expend 4 is a new mechanic from Bloom Borrow. It's not been used very often, and it's unique to Gruul colors only. And then if mana was spent from a treasure, is also another one that isn't used as much, and it was kind of mostly black cards from what I saw. But with this, it works really well, because it basically says, after Emoti hits, if you are, like, you can combo off that turn, right? So let's say it's turn 6 or it's turn 7, you've got a bunch of lands in play, you play Emoti. Emoti itself is not going to make any treasure tokens, because it needs to see you expend 4, which you would have done casting Emoti. So if you cast Emoti early and you get to untap with it, you'll be able to make 2 treasures using Emoti to potentially help you storm off using that. If you have a bunch of treasures already, and you have a bunch of lands already, you cast Emoti, and then even if someone's trying to remove it, you casting any spells in response off the treasures that you have are all going to Cascade. And so you're going to be instantly gaining value from those spells. They can't really stop you unless they counter Emoti, right? So Emoti hitting the board has instant impact. All of your treasures, say when you spend mana from this to cast a spell, that spell gains Cascade, basically. And that's kind of pretty strong. So if you have a bunch of treasures already when you do cast Emoti, then things get kind of crazy. And that's kind of the idea, right? Like, you want to be using that Cascade strategy to cast lots of spells. If you go, okay, here's my Emoti on 3, no one kills it. Okay, untap Bloodbraid Elf off 2 treasures. I'll get 2 treasures, I'll Cascade, and I have a guy, and then I can start doing a whole bunch of stuff like that. So you would basically play a lot of red spells like make treasures, and then you would play like a bunch of ramp stuff, and then you would try and figure out what your top end looks like a Mind's Desire or something like that, which is kind of cool. I think this is a much more interesting way of that kind of Avernus strategy. And you could be playing lots of cheap spells that protect Emoti. So if you cast Emoti and you just happen to have one treasure, which is like, there's a 1-drop red spell that makes a treasure, and then you go Fast Seek on 2, Emoti on 3, somebody goes, well, I'm going to bolt your Emoti. We go, okay, here's Snakeskin Veil, Eye Cascade. And then Eye Cascade into Ancestral Visions, or Crashing Footfalls, or any of those really strong 0-cost spells. Sick. That's Value Town. So I think it's just a better version of Avernus, at least like what I wanted from Avernus. Anyway, I did put some notes on the screen. It is trying to play to Emoti's original Simic Cascade effect, but because we are adding that red color identity, we are adding that red core treasure strategy, which is kind of the main acceleration that red has in stuff like Commander, and so there is going to be a lot of support for it in that kind of strategy. And so the game plan is basically make lots of treasures, cast lots of spells, and I think that this would be fun for that kind of strategy. Now we have one more guy. Now this one is the Chaos. This is a Temur Chaos character. Let's talk about Braid's Upheaval Adept. 4, 1 colorless, green, blue, and red. Legendary creature, human wizard, 2/4. Whenever one or more permanents you control are returned to your hand, draw that many cards. Whenever Braids leaves play, you may put up to 2 land cards from your hand onto the battlefield. So, that's a lot to digest. I understand that. But let's talk about just the first part. This is very similar to Paradoxical Outcome, where whenever something gets bounced to your hand, you get to draw that many cards. And there's a lot of ways to abuse your strategy for yourself, but also if you just get Cyclonic Rifted, you get to draw a bunch of cards, you're going to get value and stuff like that. Into the Floodmoor, I get a fish, and I get to draw a card. So it's semi-removal resistant in that way. It helps your opponents not want to bounce your stuff and maybe blow up your stuff, or something like that. And Paradoxical Outcome itself is like a pretty strong combo deck, and we'll perhaps dig into that in a little bit. But when Braids leaves play, you get to play 2 lands from your hand onto the battlefield. So that means if they kill Braids, it's had an onboard effect, right? So it enters, you have this protection clause where you're drawing cards, and then if Braids leaves, you get to play 2 lands, which is going to give you the ability to play Braids again pretty consistently to keep her in play. And it helps keep the tempo of keeping you in front, which I really like. And I do see a way where you can have kind of an aggressive aura combo strategy with this one, because you can be playing stuff. There is a bunch of blue creatures that can return themselves to your hand. There is a green frog that also bounces other stuff to your hand. There's a there is a Fear of blank. I can't remember which one it is. Fear of Missing Out is the only one that I care about. There's the blue Fear of 2-drop enchantment creature that returns things to your hand. You can be playing a bunch of those type creatures to be getting the extra cards drawn, be getting those extra kind of synergies. Putting Braids in your hand means that she costs 4, and you get to play 2 lands. So playing stuff that bounces your own Braids so that you can be playing her and drawing extra cards is also potentially a combo strategy. So I made a short list of some cards that have some high fun synergies here. I picked 6. I could have thought of many more, but I picked 6. So the reason why Braids is called the Upheaval Adept is because you cast Upheaval, Braid says, sick, you can draw like 9 cards and also play 2 lands. So you'll be the only person with permanents in play, which is really strong. Wildfire is kind of the same. Wildfire exiles all permanents, exiles all hands and graveyards, which means that Braids would let you play 2 land cards, but you'll have no cards in hand. So you would need to have something that's like, when this leaves, draw cards. But if you did have 2 lands, you could play them. Which, again, kind of goofy. Teferi's Time Twist. So, again, going in a different direction. Teferi's Time Twist lets you exile Braids and return her. So, when she gets exiled, you get to play 2 extra lands. So, if you're playing a bunch of flicker effects like this, like Displace a Kitten, then you can potentially be playing lots and lots of lands per turn, and she can get away kind of crazy. But it means you need to be able to draw all of these lands as well. And then for the more aggro side, we have the Mist Breath Elder, which at the beginning of your upkeep, you return a creature you control to its owner's hand, and that's going to let Braids draw you cards. You could be bouncing the Braids in that way to play extra lands, so you can play dudes quicker, and stuff like that. And then we have Undiscovered Paradise. Old heads will know this one as your best way of playing Bloodghast 100 million times. But basically, Undiscovered Paradise is a land that returns itself to your hand. So that would be a way of drawing in extra cards. And because Braids lets you play extra lands from your hand, Undiscovered Paradise always either being in play or in your hand kind of works really well there. And then, of course, the Paradoxical Outcome, where you can either return the Braids or you return like a bunch of Cheerios. Normally in Vintage, when you Paradoxical Outcome, you're returning all of your marks into your hand. But for this, you've got access to red, so you can play all the Kobolds, you can play Shield Spheres, you can play Ornithopters, and you return all those things to your hand. Paradoxical Outcome draws you a whole bunch of cards, and also Braids draws you a whole bunch of cards. You get to play all the creatures again, and then you go from there. So I think this is like a challenge to break me kind of card. Like you go, wow, this has a lot of insane value in it. How do we get the most value here? What's the most fun way for me to play this card? And there's some cool options. And that's what I want out of a Temur commander. That's my problem. I've looked at a lot of them. I've played Rashmi and Ragavan, and yay, but I play the card and people go, well, I'm not going to let you get extra value, I'll kill the thing. And then it's done nothing. And there's just so many Temur commanders that are like that, where it comes into play and it does nothing. And that sucks, right? And there's, I want ramp out of my commander. Like I play Helga as my banned commander at the moment. Helga is great. Because people go, oh yeah, whatever, it taps for 1 green on your next turn, that's not a big deal. But then every consecutive turn that they leave it going on, it starts to generate more and more value, and they go, well, now is now the time to get rid of it, kind of thing. A lot of the Temur commanders don't really excite me like that. Rog Thras, I think, is really the only good one, where you go, okay, Thrasios wants a Gaia's Cradle, and Rograk lets Gaia's Cradle tap for 1 on turn 1, and also lets you sacrifice it to cast Flare of Duplication. And so you just play 2 red cards in your entire deck, and that's Rograk's value train. Yeah. And then you also get to play the thing that gives everything escape, Underworld Breach. And yay, right? Like, it's a 2-card addition to a blue-green deck, and it's kind of silly. There's just no other card that makes me excited and wants to build a deck, and so I just really wish that there was more Temur commanders. And that's kind of my biggest critique of Commander. I think monocolor and I think duo color always have this problem where I just, oh man, I wish I was in this 3rd color, or I wish I had access to this thing, or I'm playing a green-red deck, but I have this blue-green card that I really, really like and really fits the strategy. I wish I was in 3 colors. Like, I really like Tanuk, Memorial Ensign, and I really like Vivi Onatia in the 99. Playing Vivi as a commander is a sin. But those 2 cards do something similar and generate a value engine, specifically in Temur. What Temur commander best houses Tanuk and Vivi? Cast spells and plays lands a lot? Well, nothing. Nothing really. Omnath? Maybe? I don't know. And so it's been frustrating for me to really find a Temur commander that I really like and I want to be able to play a deck with. And so I think there needs to be more. I think there needs to be more 3-color commanders in general, because I think that's where the game is at its best, when you have access to a lot of funky different tools and you are trying to build something fun like that. Now, I've made a whole bunch of other kind of Commander and Brawl commentary kind of videos. We just did a big series on Brawl with commanders that need to be added to the Brawl client, ones that exist in a bunch of colors, because there's only like 7 Abzan commanders in total, for example, and Temur is just as bad. And also cards that need to be banned in Brawl, and also just cards in general that need to be printed in Brawl. And then I've been talking about a lot of other stuff like this as well. And I have a design series where I've been looking at League of Legends champions and creating Magic cards for them as well. So if you're interested in any of that kind of stuff, I've got the whole playlist up on the screen. You can go on your own little adventure and check out some of that stuff. And then, you know, hopefully maybe Wizards of the Coast will one day notice me and my cool ideas can be appreciated, and we'll see some interesting new stuff actually in the game instead of just in this theory space. So if you click all the fun buttons and you recommend this to 1,000 of your friends, and then Wizards of the Coast sees it, then maybe we'll get some cool Temur commanders. It's up to you. I've done the hard work. You just got to click the button.